Hello, hello. Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth, the Raven and the Smart Raven. I'm your host, the Smart Raven. And joining me tonight is one half of my two co-hosts, Digital Crush, Christopher M. Hall.
Hello, hello.
It's been a crazy week. Normally on Thursdays we do comic reviews, but there's been so much going on in the world of the comic book industry with the apparent acquisition of Diamond Distributions by Alliance Entertainment. A lot of speculations, a lot of misconceptions, I think.
Right. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've absolutely heard something about this. So we're here to hopefully clear some stuff up.
Yeah, hopefully. Now, there's a lot of good information out there, and we're going to show some of that. Let's go ahead and, talk about a little bit of that first. Technically, deal has not gone through yet. It's still in front of the courts. There have been multiple parties who have filed complaints against this potential acquisition. Notably, Universal Distributors out of Canada and Image Comics. Universal Distributors out of Canada were the original, what we call a dark stalker pre-bid wager. And to my understanding, and correct me if you think otherwise, Chris, they have the right to present a counteroffer before that deal is allowed to go through to the court.
From my understanding, yes, that is correct.
And so there's that's holding it up a little bit. And then there is the deal with Image. So let's go ahead and share the deal with Image first. As this is reported, now we're not big fans of Bleeding Cool, but Rich is doing a decent job over there on this. We're not going to argue, about that. They noted that the agreed winning bid for the majority of to Alliance Entertainment, or AENT, they noted that contracts are going to be transferred from Diamond to Alliance Entertainment. Image Comics has filed a formal objection that challenges this proposal to assume and assign a key distribution agreement as part of the Chapter 11 asset sale, while also disputing the amount that Diamond claims that owes Image. In doing so, this reveals Image's previously commercially confidential contract with Diamond, etc. Now, we're not going to go through all of the specific details from the contract that's in this thing. If you want to go there, just go to bleedingcool.com. A lot of that stuff is on there.
It outlines the whole contract.
Yeah, it outlines the whole contract. But basically, they're disputing the proposed cure amount, which is the sum that Diamond must pay to resolve outstanding debts before Alliance can assume the contract. Diamond's listing this amount is over $25,000 in bankruptcy notice, but Image is claiming it's owed at almost $70,000, and that's just for sales reported through November 2024, after accounting $66,000 that it owes Diamond in fees. What this looks like on paper, in interpretation to me, is that the buyout structure, as opposed to Alliance, is wanting to sell and assume this at a extremely discounted rate for goods already acquired that have not been paid for in full by Diamond. That should be something that, in my opinion, the court trustees should be saying to. You've got to pay in full. Diamond has to pay that amount in full before Alliance should be allowed to assume that account, for two reasons. Number one, you are creating a new business negotiation with a new distributor in Alliance. If you sell all this past goods to them at a third of the cost, which is what it looks like you're trying to sell it as a third of the actual owed money, that's going to create constant, it's going to make Diamond, or not Diamond, but Image not want to do business with Alliance in the future. It's also going to create an image. It's going to hurt their brand because it's going to look like their books aren't worth as much, because those books being sold at liquidation are going to be then turned around and sold at even cheaper cost for turnaround on the price because they can. So either way, this does not do good for Image on their public image. Pardon the pun. It's not helping. Yeah, it doesn't help their creators because their creators aren't getting paid the money on the back end like the contracts read for Image. Which, of course, I don't expect Bruce Ogilve over at Alliance to understand that because he's not familiar with the industry or how these companies work. But nevertheless, Diamond does know that, and they should know better.
Right.
So I understand. I totally understand why Image has filed their grievance.
Because they'd be getting pennies on the dollar for what they're owed.
Yeah. Right. And it's not just Image. There should be other companies filing as well, but they probably haven't filed as recently as yesterday. But there should be, almost every publisher who's got something to do with Diamond right now, who has not been paid in full to their sums, should have already filed a motion with the court on this for that reason. The problem becomes, since there are so many different smaller self-publishers and everything, how many accounts and what is owed is the court going to follow through on? Because some of them are going to say, well, the money that you've got isn't significant enough to what you're owed compared to the other people. And there's only so much money that this company is going to get sold for. So there's one of the problems that we're going on, and that's why there's a kind of a holdup on the sale for that. Now, as for the, to go return back to Universal Distribution, I don't know what the actual original pre-bid was. My understanding is that it might actually be very similar numbers. And then there's got to be a reason why Diamond accepted and tried to force this through quickly. Now, I know that according to Bruce Ogilve, he tried to buy this before it went to the actual court. They tried to become the dark horse bidder. And they didn't get it. Yeah, Universal did. So I don't know if this was done just to try and short shrift the system or what. It's very kitschy, in my opinion.
Seems kind of underhanded a little bit, yeah.
Now we do know that in this bid, and this is something that's also holding up the thing with this acquisition, is Diamond was trying to get monies to pay their personnel, especially their key hire personnel, almost an extra bonus package as part of the sale. And the trustee said, no, that ain't happening, which is good. But and Diamond has actually requested that be removed from the actual paperwork and bidding. That should not happen. That should be that should remain as part of the legal record. Now, let me explain that Diamond was not doing anything wrong by asking for this. Diamond was trying to protect their employees. What's going to happen when Alliance acquires Diamond, assuming they do, because it's still looking like it's 90% probability or better. Alliance will look at how Diamond is holding their operations for the first 6 months to 8 months. And then they're going to start looking at redundancies between what they already have in their group and what Diamond has. And they're going to get rid of the Diamond people and keep their own. This is typical business operations for any acquisitions. And this company has been doing acquisitions of other companies for 30 years. This is what they do. Okay.
I had read that that Alliance was actually going to keep on everybody from Diamond.
They're going to keep everybody on from Diamond for a set period. Okay. And it's going to be anywhere from 6 to 18 months is what they're going to do while they do the transitional period and learn what they need to do and shift it over to their system of distribution, because Diamond is not working the same infrastructure yet.
Right.
So they're going to learn what Diamond does and why they do it this way. They're going to go, okay, these things don't work this way. Our way of system is better. We're going to teach everybody how to shift it over. And once they got everything like that, they're going to get rid of those top salaried people as redundancies, because they've already got their own top salary people. Plus, they've got a second tier of management who can't go up any higher in their infrastructure. Those people probably will be the ones who end up taking over Diamond 18 to 24 months from now.
That makes sense.
That's typically what happens when you have a corporate buyout like this. Oops, sorry about that. This is just normal business process when you have that kind of a buyout or any kind of merger. You get rid of the redundancies of positions. And usually the person who does the buying is the one who keeps on. So that's what we can expect. Now, it's not, like I said, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over probably the next 18 to 24 months. It might happen faster. I don't think it will, because it shouldn't, but you never know. But yeah, everybody's going to be kept on for the interim, and everything's going to be kept running as is, which, as is, as we know, is not working.
Right.
For many people.
Do you think
it's going to be?
Go ahead.
No, you have a question. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say. So do you think? So they're going to have to before the sale goes through with Alliance, they're going to have to restructure the deal, right, to satisfy Image and all the other people who are owed money.
They're going to have to satisfy whoever the court says they need to satisfy. It's the court that needs to be satisfied in this overall, and there's going to be a lot of people who are not happy with whatever happens with whoever it is, whether it goes with Alliance, if it goes through Universal. It's going to be one of the two. It's looking like 85-90% Alliance, unless the court sees something that just isn't workable.
Right.
But they will dictate most likely what makes it workable, or say, no, you have to go back and renegotiate this part, and that's what the court is doing right now, last I knew, which was as of 4 p.m. yesterday. That's the last I got a chance to look at it. Now, the reason I haven't had a chance to look at it today is because, for those who don't know, yesterday my van ended up going in the shop and my father ended up going to the hospital. So I've been kind of a crazy thing going on all at once for me.
Right.
But,
yeah. Life happens.
Yeah. Yeah, life happens. So anyway, that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at what Alliance actually is.
So
now,
is there any?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Ask a question.
So is there any sort of precedence as to how long this holdup might take?
there is a time limit. The courts may extend that time limit, but there's only, Diamond has had a limited amount of money afforded them to continue operations, and they have to be able to pay that loan back in a certain amount of time. And it's a very limited amount of time comparative to what's going on because they were in bankruptcy. So my guess is probably by May they should have no later than May they should have a solution.
Okay.
Is my guess. This is why I wanted Jamal on, because Jamal could give a little more insight on that sort of thing. But I think it's looking at, give them a couple weeks to at the most, and the thing is, they've been working on this stuff nonstop for the last 6-8 months, at least, even before they went to bankruptcy,
right,
and declared it. They've been working towards these things and negotiating things and trying to make a plan. So it's not like they're, sitting there with their thumbs up their butts. They are trying to get this done in some way.
Right.
The key becomes, however, people thinking, that this is going to destroy the infrastructure of what the direct market is. And we'll get to that in just a minute. First, we want to get to what is Alliance Entertainment. Okay.
And they have many divisions.
Yes, they do. This is from ICV2. This person who's writing these articles for ICV2 knows distribution. This is Milton Griep. This is the guy who used to run Capital City Distribution, which was basically the other company besides Diamond that mattered in distribution before the monopoly. He's gone into the history of it. The company was originally owned and founded by Jeff Walker and David Hurwitz as a retail music store, and then they began wholesaling music CDs a few years later, and that led to the founding of music wholesaler Super D in 1995. In 2001, they sold a third of the company to Bruce Ogilve, who had previously built and sold a music distributor to Alliance Entertainment. And then the pair grew sales of Super D from $18 million to $194 million in annual sales. Now, this is particularly in music distribution, CDs. There was albums and cassettes as well, but mostly CDs in the 90s. Super D acquired Alliance Entertainment in 2013 and merged the companies. At that point, Walker became CEO and Ogilvy became the executive chairman. They have done numerous acquisitions of different companies. They've done toy companies. They've done gaming companies, video gaming companies. When I say gaming, I'm talking about like role-playing collectible card games,
right.
Other things like that. They've done video games. They've done acquisitions for video, film, television, DVD, Blu-ray type materials. And I've had annual sales between 1.1, they say around 1.1 billion, which last year of 2024. It was a privately owned company until 2023 when it became a publicly listed SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition corporation, which explains to you what they are. They are not, Alliance is a acquisitions company. Okay. They understand distribution. They do handle distribution, but they are an acquisition corporation. Okay. They are ordering it. They're acquiring stuff for mass market distribution overall.
Right.
Okay. They have a number of lines of businesses, including distribution of entertainment, music, and video game products, including physical merchandise with around 325,000 SKUs. That is what we call a stock keeping unit. For those who don't know retail speak, what that means is when you own a store, there's a little code that goes in our computer code so And that number dictates, so when you sell, you always know how much stock you have, so you know how to restock it and when to restock it. Think of it as your ISBN code numbers or like that. It's not, there's more to it than that, but that's the best way I can describe it to layman, I guess. It's just the little barcodes that you guys see on the merchandise. They have 325,000 different items basically in stock. Now, for people who want to understand what that correlates in comparison to what Diamond was doing, even when they had exclusivity deals and were carrying everything for the Diamond market, there was typically 900 to 1,100 items a month in the catalog. Okay? They're covering literally 300 times that amount.
Oh, yeah. Huge.
Full time, always, constantly rotating stock. That's how much more massive a distributor they are. They have exclusive distribution relationships for video and music brands, which is true. Many times if you've gone to Walmart or Target and you've seen these odd B.C. type movies, and they're like $5 to $8, and you're trying to figure out what those are and where did they come from. This is the distributor that distributed them.
Yeah, the big $5 bins that everybody like rifles through. Yeah, that's
what they do here. Okay, which is why people need to. This is what I made a point of this, because when we get into something that was being talked about on a video where Ogilve was interviewed and the panic that people were having over something that Ogilve said, I'm going to correct you on that, folks. Just give me a moment when we get that far. They license video content for production and sale of DVDs. This means they broker some of the production of those DVDs for cheap as a backer. Okay, they're like a silent investor to make sure that those DVDs are afforded and produced and distributed to mass market. They have vendor managed inventory for retailers. What that means is they own vendors who go to the stores and stock the stores themselves, as opposed to having the regular employees stock it. Okay.
Yeah. So if you've ever been in a like Walmart and you've seen like the guy stocking the soda or the bread, that's a vendor.
Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. But what you meant to say was, when you see the person stocking the trading cards and the comics at the front by the cash register.
That too, yes.
That's the vendors, okay? A lot of times bread and other merch, while there are local supplier vendors that do serve that and do stock it, it's also stocked by the employees of Walmart. Typically, this stuff is not stocked by employees at Walmart. They don't know anything about it.
Right. Okay.
That's why I'm saying this. That's what we mean by vendor management. Okay. So they're the ones that who were like helping market all the Pokemon cards and some of those other things as a secondary or tertiary, when Diamond wasn't filling it themselves, because they've already had that. Now, again, Alliance ships to over 35,000 storefronts worldwide. They supply Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy, Costco, Target, Kohl's, BJ's, Myers, Barnes & Noble, Family Dollar chain, the entire Family Dollar family of stores. That includes Pop Shelf. They are also, I don't know if they're currently with Five Below, but I think they may still have a contract with Five Below. And they also have one with, I said Family Dollar, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Are they supplying for Ollie's too?
According to the interview that was just done with Ogilve that we're going to show, he said he didn't know who Ollie's was, but that doesn't mean they don't. Just because he's the chairman doesn't mean he knows every single vendor group or clientele that they do business with. Okay.
Right.
You got to remember he's a chairman, but there are other sales reps who represent and sell to these organizations that are the ones that are that.
Yeah.
So he may not, they may or they may not. If they don't, he's been made aware of it, and his people will be looking into it.
Yes.
So
Ogilvy's a big picture kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, it's that sort of thing. Now, independent stores, which we're talking about, individual comic shops, they sell to over 2,500 independent retailers. While Diamond and Alliance together would service around 5,000. With a limited overlap, that could roughly triple the number of independent retailers that Diamond would be serving than they have now. Okay, which is a good thing for comic store, for comic publishers, because that means we're going to get that many more people potentially ordering our books. But a lot of retailers are going, oh, I'm not going to be the exclusive. Yeah, I don't understand.
I know there was some concern, and we may be talking about this later on. I'm not sure about the price point and the profit percentage and all that stuff.
We are going to get to. We're going to get to that. But yeah, the main thing though, overall of this acquisition is Alliance has their home headquarters in Florida. Their main warehouse is in Kentucky, but they have a parent group out in California or out in Washington. I can't remember which. That is like their West Coast, and they have a West Coast hub distributor warehouse over there. The reason they really wanted to buy this Diamond deal was because they wanted the Olive Branch warehouse for all their stuff as a third hub, centralized in the country. Now, people might say, well, that's an awful lot of money to spend on a warehouse and infrastructure like that. And it is. However, the way they're doing it, they're going to acquire all the stock that's in that warehouse, whatever's in there. Okay. And, since it is a not a liquidation sale, but a bankruptcy sale, you get it as an extremely discounted rate. So you can sell mass market at a much lower price point and get that level he's talking about. He wants that certain price point.
Right.
And that's what he's going to have. Now, that's what everybody's afraid of, because they're afraid if he does that, it's going to, first off, the publishers are afraid they're not going to get paid in full for their books. They're going to get paid a majorly discounted rate. And that is a major concern. And it's a valid concern. But and Ogilve should I'm not going to say he should know better. Ogilve should be taking that into consideration, because he has to move forward with these publishers as and you don't want to have them have a foul taste in their mouth just right out of the gate, because they're not going to trust you.
Right.
And the thing is, he knows this. He's been doing this for decades. So I don't think that's what his intent is. Whether it's Diamond's intent, well, Diamond's got that shady reputation for the last 30 years. That's where the anger comes in.
Yeah.
So, that it is what it is. But what publishers need to understand is you're going to have literally 17 to 25 times the expansion to get your books marketed to, potentially. Even if you were to get your stuff sold at, they buy it at liquidation and sell it at discount. If they do right by you, and you can start demanding this. I mean, now's the time to go to Alliance directly and explain your concerns, and I'm going to show you their page and how to get a hold of them. But if you have selling 10,000 units through Diamond, that's only marketing to like 1,200 accounts versus 35,000 accounts. Now, I'm not saying you're going to sell 350,000 because it's 35 times bigger. You're not necessarily, because a lot of these vendors don't know what to do with comics, don't know how to market comics. This is what the 2 to 3 year transitional period is going to be about, is figuring out where we can market and place these books.
Right. Because there were concerns that Alliance isn't predominantly a comic book vendor.
Right. So, they don't understand that side of it. They understand mass marketing. And comic book stores are like, well, we're niche. I'll try and make it simple. Dynamite Entertainment does a lot of variant covers. Okay. Your A cover is your mass market cover that you distribute through all the distributors. Okay. Now, you can have a different cover for every variant retail outlet that you have. And then for what we call our direct market or diamond market, whatever, you restructure so that you don't have all 28 variants to pick up, because we don't need that for a small press or a small individual retailer to be having to buy anyway, to try and pander to their customers. What you do as a publisher is you take all those variant covers and you put them in a cover book, pinup book, and sell that at a higher price as a collectible edition and a higher grade quality for the collector who wants those art for the cover. And you take all the logos off of it and you make it like a little, you can either do it affordable, like trade value book of it, or you can do like the artist editions and make them high-end $50 to $125 outlet books. And those can be sold through both your comic shops and your major bookstore outlets, or through Ollie's or whatever.
Right.
That's what you have to do, is that instead of spending 28 volumes and trying to generate a number which makes sure retailers have to spend all their money on one SKU, so to speak. They're different SKUs, but you're still selling the same product.
Right.
And you're creating a restrictive product line available to your customer. And that generates animosity from your customers, because they get tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over, for one thing. And the second thing is, they can only afford so much as it is. I would rather spend $50 on a pinup book that has really high grade quality production value and get those covers images as pinups, than spend $5 or more per cover at 28. Well, that's 100. If there's 28 covers, it's $5 a pop. And a lot of retailers are charging more than that, because some of them are, you got to order so many, like a 50 to 1 or 100 to 1 to get that just for your store. So they're charging higher dollar for that, yet just as a collectible. That's where a lot of the problem for retailers is coming from, I think. And this would be a good way to have it so that you've got mass market sales for your publishers that are going to maintain your numbers, so that your creators can get paid, because they're going to have a 6-figure unit sale just on the A level, just on your primary cover. And then your collectibles, we can rotate it around. Okay. The other thing that can be done is you do limited edition print runs of your variant covers at a set number, and you give a certificate of authenticity or whatever with that, and charge it more for that. And again, you put it in a higher grade production value. You put it in a packaging, protective packaging, not like just a plastic bag, but something Not quite like what we do for grading. That's a little bit too much maybe, but
Right.
something that protects the book and the certificate, and then you can go get your book graded and you already got certification. It won't cost you as much on that end, and and you can get your grades a lot easier then. That would be, and then since they're buying the grading company from Diamond, that's part of what they're buying is that certification and grading company. They're basically doing all that right there up front for you, so that you have all that just delivered immediately directly off of your order. You don't have to take the book and say, "Oh, I got this book," and then ship it to somebody and have it graded and have it shipped back to you.
Right.
That streamlines the process. So there are things that there's potential things to make better for retailers in that regard, but it's not going to happen overnight. We got to talk about it. We got to see what retailers actually need to, they need to understand what comic book shops are going to be moving forward. You're going to be looking at mass market to get your newbies in, and then you guys are going to be focusing on getting the high-end stuff in the special stores. And that doesn't mean that everything's going to be priced out of sight. It won't be. Which takes us back to what you were concerning. A lot of people are worried about this whole $5. Is the $5 floppy, or is the floppy as a whole gone? Because Ogilve said in the interview he doesn't want to make less than 95 cents per unit sold.
Yes.
Okay. For those who don't understand, $5, you give a 62% discount to the distributor. Well, that's like $3.60. So 5 out of 360 is $1.40 that they're making profit, theoretically. But they are not getting that profit because they have to give 57%, 48 to 57% back to the retailer. So what they're making is usually between 4 and 12 cents profit per unit is what is typically going on in the direct market for Diamond. Now, people are going, well, but you got to remember, what is our number of unit sales? Typical. If you go back even before COVID, if you were to go back to Comicron.com and look at the numbers, and I can do that right now, and just go to Comicron 2019. Well, actually, we can do it right here. Well, no, we'll just do it this way. 2019. Okay. This is 2019. So this was 6 years ago. Well, I gotta stop this real quick and present the other one. All right. Now, the number one in units was Batman Who Laughs. It only sold 117,827 units. Sounds like a big number, right?
Yes, but
but you're talking about that number across around 1,300 retailers, which means you're selling only an average of 100 copies a store. That's not very much. 100 to 120 copies it's not bad numbers by any means. But you got to remember, there's a lot of stores like Bob's store up in Alpena where Chris is. He wasn't selling 100 copies of that book in 2019. He was selling like maybe 10. And that other 90 is now in a New York store or Chicago major store where they had the clientele base to balance it out. So even though the number balances out at 100 per store, it's nowhere near that dynamic for overall units. When you get into selling a number, like if you had 100,000 units through, say, Walmart, that's only like 5 copies a store.
Right.
That's not going to be what they're aiming for. They're aiming for 35 to 50 copies a store in every Walmart not necessarily every Walmart supermarket store, the ones that are just the supermarkets, but the full ones, the full base stores. You're going to have that. I don't know if you guys remember Alliance Comics from a few years ago that had a deal with Diamond or with Walmart directly. They used to have they had them 4 books, Bass Reeves, and I can't remember what the other ones were called now. I think one was called Northsiders or something like that. They had displays for like 8 or 9 months. And those vendors, they didn't have a vendor representative the way Alliance Entertainment. I didn't want to say Alliance doesn't have the same as Alliance. I had to clarify it. Too many people using the same names. Get your own.
Right.
But anyway, they didn't have the vendor reps. And if you went to the Walmarts, you would find the displays for those comics in different parts of the store. They weren't unified. A lot of times the people would take the books and throw them out somewhere and leave them out in different areas of the store, and it wasn't kept the way a vendor controlled scene is comparatively. And that's one of the reasons why the Alliance Comics didn't do as well as they could have. But anyway, let's go ahead and do this here. You can see the numbers on Comic-Con here. And you keep going down, even to the top 50. We're all the way down to 36,000, just under 36,400 copies sold nationwide. Now, keep in mind, this is the top 500 and top 500 graphic novels, and you've got another 400 pieces of merchandise at least through the Diamond catalog that people are ordering from. So, and that was back when Diamond was where you got everything, theoretically. It wasn't, but most of it was there.
Yes.
But, you keep going down and down to 100. Now you're just barely over 22,600 copies. This is not good numbers.
No, not at all.
And so you're saying, 1,000 stores, 1,200 stores are selling 22,000 copies. Okay, you're selling 20 copies of Black Panther a month. That's what they ordered. That doesn't. Okay, now how much of their percentage is sell through at the store? Because not every store has the same sell through either. How many of these people have? How many times? I mean, you don't go to the conventions, Chris, but for those of you who go to conventions, watch what your retailers have. A lot of the retailers have the exact same stock up for sale at their tables because they got the same overstock that they had to order to get those high-end upends, and here they got these other books over here that aren't selling for them, as a result, because they just don't have it. Hold on a minute. I'm trying to get this. There we go. There's a lot of really good products here that could be selling literally 5 times as much as their numbers are shown here. And that's why we've seen over the last, we've seen this boom of what you call Comicsgate, I guess, where people are going over to print on demand or going over to crowdfunding and selling direct to the consumer, is because they're not getting in there into this level even. Okay. So potentially, if these publishers are actively working with them, you're going to have a mass market sell through that will generate potential back issue interest for the IP brands at your specialty stores.
Right.
Yeah, I wish ratio variance didn't exist. Yeah, that's a big part of it. we don't need ratio variance. What you need to do is say there's going to be X number of copies printed, a limited restricted number. And whoever orders. And we make sure that every retailer who orders gets at least one copy. You may not get as many as you want, but everybody's going to get at least one. You know, if you've got 1,200 stores, a 10,000 variant, 10,000 copies is not a huge number. Or a 5,000 variant is not a huge number. You're talking about 5 copies a store maximum. You know, and a lot of stores aren't going to necessarily order those variants because a lot of stores aren't into variants. They don't want to spend the money on that. They are investing in other things,
right?
Which is their right. So it just depends, you know. But when you do a thing where you got to order 100 extra copies of version A to get that one book, the retailer is forced to do a situation where either you jack up the price of the variant to cover the cost of what you spent to get that variant, or you have to sell mass quantity and push a product that you don't necessarily believe in to make up for what you spent. And that's one of the, you know, now there are stores who actually go out and buy their own personal store variants from these publishers too. So that's another question that's going to come into play. Are they going to allow for that? And that's what this is what the whole collectible angle is that a lot of these stores are complaining about. Another one is they're saying that they don't understand the distribution business of comics. I can tell you, and Joey can tell you this because Joey's store uses Alliance for their records, uses Alliance for their videos. They order something, they got it the next day. It's that simple. That's how efficient that system is. Maybe 2 days tops. Joey's boss, Eric, is I don't want to say he's ecstatic at the idea of it, but he's like, this is looking, you know, he's quite interested to see how this goes.
Yeah, what's going to play out? Yeah,
he wants this to happen. I think we had a good conversation yesterday on this. He's like, yeah, but he also thinks that they're there just to buy the warehouse and get the infrastructure expanded too. So he's like, I don't know. So it was.
But as you mentioned, they're getting more than just warehouse space out of the deal.
Yes,
they're getting a lot more. So
yeah. Well, they're getting a lot of the merch that they bought from other companies and other media that Diamond has as well.
Right.
Because Diamond doesn't just have comics; they've got the Funkos. They've got all the clothing merch from different brands. They've got the statues and all the other types of goodies that are collectibles that can be sold through Walmart and through these other Target and other places. So, you know, it's not like it's a bad thing for them either way.
Right.
It's just a matter of whether or not they pay off the debtors correctly.
So old boss, same as the new boss.
Not exactly. I understand what Joey's saying. Yes. I don't know when you stepped in to the conversation, Joey, but earlier I said like an 18 to 24 month transitional period where Alliance gets to know how Diamond's operating and what the issues are, and then they basically purge the decks and get their own people running it in under their own infrastructure. And that's when we'll start seeing the real change. But that might take 18 to 24 months. It could be as little as 6 months, but I'm thinking more 18 to 24 because that's typical transitional period for a buyout like that. Okay. I want to go back to sharing. the information from IC do. All right. We already talked about the acquisition and the number of independent retailers they would both be serving. They've got the AutoStore automated storage and retrieval system, which is better than what Diamond has. They've got their Sortex system, streamlined fulfillment, which is better than what Diamond has, and that is their Shepherdsville, Kentucky warehouse, which is their primary one. And then again, like I said, they have another one on the West Coast as well.
And their inventory system is proprietary, isn't it? Right? Like, didn't Ogilve come up with it or something?
I think it is proprietary of a sort, but I think it's also it's proprietary. It's not open source, but it's something akin to open source. In other words, you have to pay him a fee, but anybody can use it.
Right. Okay.
Okay. And it's not just if you have an account with them per se. Although I think the fee is like, if I understood it right, you pay like a one-time fee of somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,500 range, I think, for access to that, and then you have access to use that for your stores or as a publishing thing.
Okay. So in the long run, that's a pretty negligible fee,
right? I think that's what it was, from what I remember. If that's still what applies, that's what it used to be. Now, whether that's going to be in play for this, I don't know, because a lot of comic book stores are going to say that's a big chunk of change for me, in the immediacy. And it is for many stores that are living pretty much hand to mouth. And this is where the hang up for a lot of the comic shop retailers is, well, let's hand them out. Even a store like the one that Joey works at, don't get me wrong, they got good turnover, but they've also got a lot of stock that's sitting. There's only so much you can do with so much space.
Right.
And, you only have so many people coming into the store on a day-to-day basis. It's not like any standalone independent store owner is getting the kind of foot traffic that a Target or a Walmart or a Barnes & Noble are.
Right.
So what Alliance has the potential to do, though, for them is say, okay, what if you've got this overstock and you're sitting on, can Alliance buy that back from you so that you don't have overstock sitting in storage?
Yeah, which was a big bone people had with Diamond because of they didn't do buybacks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's okay. Jeppy used to do silent partnerships with certain stores. But the problem is when the store runs afoul of budgetary restraints, that gave Jeppy the means to come in and take your merchandise from you in lieu of payment.
Okay.
And because he's a silent partner and you are failing, he takes the merch back. You don't have anything to sell.
Right.
And Kevin Clady, who I've mentioned on this channel on many occasions, back in the 90s, would turn around when these stores were facing closure, and would pay liquidation fees like what these guys do to get their stock out of them at a fair rate and pay Jeppy off his fee, because he would make less money getting paid off than he would get the merchandise.
Right.
And that used to piss Steve off. But that's what that was part of what Clady did. And Clady used to have warehouses in Kentucky and Tennessee, but they were unfortunately destroyed last year in the floods. But it is that situation. But anyway, as ICV2 is showing here, there's a lot of really good money. They've got good equity. They've got recent assets. So if they do this, and the closing of the acquisition is for the transaction is scheduled for April 10th. So you see they've got 2 weeks. Okay. There's not going to be time for changing any operations. They're going to continue the operations until changes can be made. But, that's what we've got is 2 weeks for the courts to decide. And that's what the court is going to review what's going on with Universal and with Image and anybody else who files a complaint. And 2 weeks. Obviously, this is always in state of flux. It's always in motion. Both Alliance and Diamond will have their chance to respond to those issues in court. Like I said, it still looks like I'd say it's probably an 85-90% yes. This is what's going to happen.
Okay.
It's just a matter of what the parameters of who's getting paid what as far as the debtors and how that breaks down. And I think that the courts, based on what we have seen with the court appointed trustee raising red flags at different intervals, I think they're sincere in trying to make things right for everybody. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get what they want out of this. A lot of people are still going to feel like they got burned no matter what happens.
Right.
Unfortunately. And that's because there's too much debt versus value of merchandise versus what can be sold at auction costs of this nature.
Right.
And this might have been part of why he wanted to buy it outright before. This kind of been maybe he could have offered a better money. I don't know. I'm not privy to the what was offered that could not be accepted because of the court situation. So but it's all right.
So is anything been mentioned or talked about that you know of that is this going to change things at all for independent publishers with print runs of say 5,000 or less?
Okay, this is what those kind of publishers need to pay attention to. You've been dealing with a very small niche audience base of retailers who are predominantly wanting to sell brand name collectibles. Okay, you are basically only treated as afterthoughts for the better part of the past 20, 25 years. You have the potential now to deal with Alliance. You need to talk to these people. You need to talk to their sales reps, and you need to say, what do I need to do to reformat my product for mass market consumption? That doesn't mean you're going to get out of comic shops. You still want to be part of comic shops. That's fine. But if I can let's take our friend Ben Dunn from Antarctic Press. If he takes everything that he has in archives and were to start a whole new print run from the very beginning, from 40 years ago, and do them in like trade, manga trades, either black and white or color, reproduction point of $9.95 to $14.95. Those books could potentially get marketed through Diamond, to the comic book stores, to Target, to Walmart, to Barnes and Noble, Five Below, all these different stores. our other good friend that's usually on here, not usually, but has been on here quite a bit in recent weeks, David Campiti and his rack, the spinner racks.
Yeah, his revolutionary spinner racks.
Yes, that product is something that he wants to try and market to Alliance so that they can get that display into these stores to allow for comics as a whole to be then justified, and then they can get vendor representatives representing Alliance working these stores, working no specific vendor racks, which is what Newsstand used to be. Okay, so basically what you're going to do is reestablish a form of newsstand. It's just going to be controlled by Alliance.
Okay.
And now, exactly what the breakdown of those percentages would be, exactly what potential market share there could be, that I can't name off the top of my head because there's a lot of different factors that need to be taken into consideration. And I'm not one of Alliance's sales reps. I wouldn't have to have Bruce, the sales rep, that's marketing marketing what they're marketing already before I could even speculate as to how that would look like.
Right.
That's what the next 6 to 18 months are doing, is testing the waters, figuring it out. That's what this is going to be for the next 6 to 18 months. But yeah, there's a lot of potential there. But the small press people need to understand you've been born into the direct market.
Right.
Now it's time to come out of your shell. And the direct market is great for a certain level of points, but now we can go beyond that. And then in return, because you're going to have back issues, because you're going to have other things available through specialty stores, people who are buying in the mass market who missed an issue, or who bought in the mass market who want a higher grade collected edition, can come to a collector's store for that. And what Alliance has to do is kind of merge those two levels, I think.
So there's a lot of potential good news for the industry.
Yes, there is. But you got to have people with the right mindset to make it happen too.
They need to hire you, man.
Yeah. I don't know if they need to hire me or not. Like I said,
Alliance, are you listening? Come on.
Yeah. No. Well, the thing is, Bruce knows this. I know he knows this. I mean, if you listen to his conversation with Dennis Barger and the other people on Beyond Wednesdays, he does explain that. He's telling you it's going to be a 6 to 18 month process. Right. He's telling you I haven't even been allowed to go to the warehouse and see the stock yet because it's not allowed by the court. He cannot give you any insight as to what his official plans are at this point because he doesn't have it all in front of him. A lot of this is he's got a lot of it in front of him, but doesn't have all of it. And you can't build a business model without all the facts.
Right.
You can build part of it and speculate as to what you want to do, but you still have to have enough to know what, and, that's what I'm saying. Once they're in there and they're talking to the executives at Diamond, they're talking to Jeppy, they're talking to Marty Grosser, they're talking to, I can't even think of his name. James Corrick, maybe? I don't know.
James Kahoric, yeah.
Yeah. I think he's one of the guys that, yeah.
He was one of the big wigs at Diamond.
Yeah. All those people have to have a sit down and, they have to go to the warehouses. They have to show how they've got this stuff laid out, how their infrastructure is, how their computer is looking at. They're going to do a comparison to the Previews World website compared to the infrastructure and web components that Alliance has. They're going to streamline all of that, but it's not going to happen overnight. So once they got that, then we'll see what goes on.
Right.
But in the meantime, basically small press publishers just need to say, hey, I'm here. What do I need to do to be part of this? How do I make myself, more amenable to the overall scene of Alliance as a whole and not just the diamond market?
Right.
And that, again, I'm not saying that the diamond market should be abandoned. I know a lot of retailers are screaming in fear. No one's abandoning you. Okay. Yeah, it's about building the mass interest so that you have more people who become specialized fans who want to come to your stores.
Right.
But you got to get them in the mass market before you can build them into diehard fans.
Yep. Yeah, you got to get the kids, that are seeing the comics at your Targets and your Walmarts and your newsstands and stuff like that to grow into the diehard specialty store.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
Now again, we go back to that $5 point and the 95 cents and things. If I'm selling 300,000 units, my per unit print is going to be like 4 to 6 cents a book. If I'm selling 500,000 units of that, maybe not that low. Forgive me for speaking out of turn there. I'm remembering numbers from when I was regularly doing this, which is the 90s. So it's a little bit more expensive now. Probably.
Well, when's the last time a book did $400,000 to $500,000 in sales?
Hush, the brand new Batman Hush.
Oh, the Hush did? Okay.
Yeah, but still, that wasn't just one unit though. That was multiple covers and everything else.
Right.
Which means it's not actually one print run; it's multiple print runs combined. But that's neither here nor there. But if you can get your numbers into a 6-figure level consistently, it doesn't have to be 400; it can be even 100 even. Your unit sales should only be like the printing cost should only be around 38 to 40 cents. Yes, they're buying the toy distributor because Alliance does toys as well.
Is that like McFarlane, Hasbro, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. McFarlane, Hasbro, Alliance used to sell Funko. They had a direct thing with Funko Pops. They had a direct thing with I want to call it Reprise Toys, Reactive Toys, something like that. Joey, the ones that had the Reaction Toys, maybe. I think it was maybe Reaction Toys. The ones that did the Universal Monster little figurines, the vampire, werewolf, Frankenstein, Bela Lugosi, Dracula, those ones. Picture of the Black Lagoon. I think it was Reaction. Let me look up that real quick because I'm not a toy guy. We need Tracy for that. Let's see, toys. Super 7. Super 7's reaction figures. That's what I was trying to think of. The company is actually Super 7, but okay. Mm-hmm. He was the Amazo. No, I'm talking about here. I'll present it here in a second. Do you remember these type of action figures?
Oh, yes. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know.
Those were very specialty though, weren't they?
Yes, they are very specialty, and they're not cheap. Like you say, $40 for a little action figure like that.
Yeah.
But and they're not, and usually they're only $19.99, but this is now a little bit more. The back ones, these are backlogged out of production, I think now, so they're a little bit more but because this is from Nightmare Toys Store, nightmaretoys.com, but this is the reaction figure line. And then you got like, oh, that's Temu. I don't want to go to Temu.
Nobody wants to go to Temu.
Yeah. But yeah, there's all kinds of reaction ones. That's at Amazon. See, they'll be, since they serve Amazon, a lot of that stuff would go back to Amazon too. So, but there's all kinds of them. I mean, there's Friday the 13th, Planet of the Apes, Alien, Terminator, Michael Myers, Pulp Fiction, all kinds of them. So, whoop, pardon me, wrong button. There. This is just a Google page of looking up reaction toys from Super 7. Even the Misfit shop itself.
Yeah. they got the whole gamut, of toys.
Yeah. Silverhawks toys, Roger Rabbit toys, RoboCop, Predator, Gremlins, you name it. So, kind of cool stuff. But it's there. Just a lot of really cool, neat things. So that's a big one for them. But anyway, stop screen. Alrighty. Let's go back though and go to Actual Alliance's homepage. Okay, this is they're showing a lot of the stuff that they actually sell, the videos and you've seen those little mini video game displays. They sell those.
Oh, they sell home arcade games? That's cool.
Yep. So you see they carry a lot of this stuff already. So comics is kind of like just an extension of that in some ways. Pop culture in general. You can see they already got, action figures of all the stuff in here.
That's why there was concern that it was Alliance even going to give a crap about the comics market.
Yeah. Mattel, Star Wars, Funko Pop, Weta, Super 7, Lego. So, like I said, they already market all this stuff to all the majors. But anyway, sell to us. Whether you want to become a vendor or a company, put your name in as a publisher. If you've got a publisher website, put it there. If you don't, give them just, some sort of physical place to go online to see your stuff, even if it's not a physical store, although it'd be better if you did have a physical store.
Yeah. Even if it's like an Etsy store.
Yeah. Well, I prefer more than Etsy, but but anyway, make sure you have your physical address. If you have a second address, that should be your post office box, your city, your state, zip codes, etc. Whatever year you were established. When we say you're established, we're talking about the year that you licensed, you officially have your business license in the state that you are licensed in. Okay? And this is something that a lot of small press publishers don't understand. You have to be filed and registered as either a limited liability corporation or a single proprietorship. I recommend a limited liability corporation for legal protective reasons, in case you have a problem financially and you end up owing a bunch of money, like a bankruptcy situation like Diamond. They can't come after your home. They can't come after your personal assets to pay off that debt.
That's why is separate from you. Yeah.
Right. That's why you want to go to an LLC. If you need help with that type of information, we can try and help you get that kind of information. List your current distributors if you have them, even if you're self-distributing through, like a backer kit or through your own sales through crowdfunding or print-on-demand services through Kablam, Indie Planet, or Lulu.com, or any of these, making sure they all list it. Product category depends on your product. It could be you might be doing comics, you might be doing a T-shirt, you might be doing a lot of different various things. List everything, not just the one item. You want to show that you have a diverse range of products for him to consider. Okay, your brand is what you're trying to sell, not just one item. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Then product category other. Then you can list and describe the different things, and then you can go into a lot of different things and how you refer to Alliance Entertainment. You can mention me if you want. You don't have to. But yeah, this is where we go. And what is the actual address of this? Let me go ahead and put that on the screen for you. And that is www.aent.com vendor. Now, if you are established already with Diamond, and many of you aren't established with Diamond right now because of different scenarios, we understand that. Raise your concerns of what you've had issues with as a publisher / vendor with Diamond, if you've had them. Let them know what your concerns are so that they can figure out how to work things with you. I'm going to go ahead and leave that back up there for a few minutes. Okay.
Concerns and expectations.
Yeah, exactly. But also what your expectations are, what you want to provide and how do I provide it for you? Because this is a whole new ball game for most of us, right, potentially. And I understand that people are worrying about, well, gee, we're going to make books $8-10 to be outpriced. I'm telling you, if we get this in the mass market properly, we can actually bring the prices down and still make the same profit margins or higher profit margins. And then the collectibles will be an addendum over and above it. But we got to get the mass market first.
Yep, absolutely.
Any questions from our viewers? We got 3 people watching.
Speak up now or forever hold your peace.
No, it's fine. If people want to know, if you have a question about their home base and how to reach them via phone, if you don't want to try, I'm going to go ahead and post that too for them. Let me edit that. It's not letting me edit it. Delete the comment. All right.
If you're old-fashioned, don't have one of them internet machines.
Well, no, it's not that. If you have questions and you want to talk to a person,
yes,
here's their the number as well. So I'll go ahead and put that down there for you. Now, keep in mind, these guys are going to, not be able to get all your answers for you right away because they're still in the process and they're not even officially doing everything yet. So don't be like, on the phone in the morning or something.
Right.
Because they're not going to be able to give you straight up answers right yet.
Do they have an FAQ page or something?
Hmm?
Do they have an FAQ page or anything like that?
They might. Let me go look real quick here. No, I don't think they do because you got buy from us or sell to us. Okay. And then there's the business. I think their fact comes in when you actually are able to log into their main system.
Ah, okay.
Okay. So, I think that's what it is for that right now.
All right.
I could be mistaken, but I don't see any other fact or anything else that would suggest that is there. And I don't, and I don't have a login index. This is their index to their actual brands. Okay, so I don't have a code to log in on. So, but you can shop. Let's see if we can shop now without being in. Nope, you have to have a login. I thought you did. Okay, but you get to see variety of CDs and vinyls, Blu-rays, other things that they have available on that. And that's when, again, we go back to, oh, it's not showing it to you. I'm sorry. I went to push buy from us and it didn't hit the AMI level. And let me go ahead and show you. That's one thing I don't like when it opens a new window. It doesn't.
Oh, switch over.
Yeah, there we go. This is what their this is their media index, and I can't log in because I'm not an account with them. But once you have an account with them, you can actually shop all their different things online, and they'll have that all their VK1s in one place, all their VKUs. So. And of course, they do have this is discussions. This is their digital magazine. I would suggest that what they might do, instead of doing a physical printed edition of previews, is they're going to do something like this on a digital for people. But what they need to be able to make it do is make it for the general public a version so that we, as the individual consumer, can pre-order our books through our retailers.
That would be nice.
That's that. I don't, because this you have a login, and I don't know if they let you do it on an individual basis, or if you have to have an actual business, license or something. I don't know how that works, but that's what I would do. Is I would do whatever. I would probably say, because this has your interviews, your news, and your reviews of everything that they're talking about in music and movies. So I would say do that with comics and previews and make it digital and have people be able to download it digitally and then make their orders. That would probably save the printing money anyway. I don't know.
If they were even going to do a separate, magazine for comics.
Well, they probably would, because I don't know how often this comes out, and I don't know to what percentage of releases they've got in that magazine. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you can go shop now and it'll go through all the entire index of everything they've got. That's a huge, 325,000 items.
Right.
So this is probably going to be like maybe the top 200, 300 items, mass market, and then some reviews for some other stuff as well, is what I'm thinking it is. I don't know for certain because I haven't seen it. I'll have to ask Joey's boss, because he uses this. For a little more information on insight on that, and we'll come back to that in the future. Again, other than that, do you think that as you go and expand this, and I've said this before on my show, when I've talked about when I was marketing the graphic novels and built that business model for the graphic novels back in the 90s, I did put comic shops a little bit behind so that the other markets were, because I did that because there's more of those stores. And that's why a lot of people were afraid of it. And I get it. The other thing that comic shops can do to maintain their significance, their presence, their necessity of being in the discussion, shall we say. Mass market stores do not engage with public community services as a rule. Walmart's not making a deal with the American Library Association and doing everything to get all these books in the libraries like they should be, but they aren't. A lot of stores, you guys get your graphic novels, and you sell a certain amount, and then you got box loads of those. Coordinate with your libraries, coordinate with your schools to get them interested in in reading is fundamental, and get them to come use your store to get people to come. You read the books through the library or through the school, and then they can come to your store for ownership.
Right.
It's also placing your books in places that Alliance isn't serving as a secondary vendor, which I've talked about in the past as well, when I was talking about self-distribution and having to place books in other vendor and non-vendor markets. That's just basically getting an awareness of not only the medium, but of your store and its services in your community. And a lot of stores struggle with that because they don't, many store owners, it's not that they don't have social skills. It's just that they're very shy individuals. And to the general public, they don't know how to really put themselves out there in the same way. Whereas when they're in the comfort of their habitat, shall we say, with people that are like-minded, they're a little more open.
With their people.
With their people. There you go. And it's not easy to do that. But that is what you have to be successful at doing. And Joey can attest to that because that's what Eric does. Eric does a lot of that for his store, Scratch and Spin. That's why they have their events at the local theaters and promote special event nights for movie screenings. It's why they do different events outside of the store for different parts of the year, not just comics, but they often have like live bands come to perform at the show at the store and stuff like that as well. So that's the kind of thing that more stores need to do and get more active with. And there are good stores out there that are doing it. Brian Hibbs does that all the time. His podcast promotes certain things. He has reader clubs. He has a lot of different things that's going on. But a lot of stores, bless you. That was Chris's wife. But anyway, how do you? I don't want to speak for Bob up there in Alpena, where you're at.
Okay.
Because I'm not I don't know all of his situation.
No.
I imagine though he is engaged with the community for the movie side and the video game side and his restaurant side. But how much is that?
He is very engaged with the community. He actively participates in Free Comic Book Day, all that stuff. I think he does a lot of goodwill and donations and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And so he's very actively engaged with the community, which of course puts his shop on the map.
Mm-hmm.
That's why everybody, even if you're not into comic books, you know his store.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Even if it's not, that's how you get yourself out there. That's how you get customers in the door.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's the thing. You got to get customers in the door before you can sell stuff. So.
Right.
Alrighty. Mm-hmm. Any questions? Continuing. Not seeing anything in the chat, but I'm asking you as well, Chris.
Oh, no. I think it was a good episode. We covered a lot, and it was very informative. So,
okay. Well, there is more to talk about in terms of how this is going to go, but it can't be. I want to get Gamal Hennessy on the show. Gamal's a legal attorney who specializes in business and licensing and different aspects of this industry for like copyright, trademark, all that stuff.
Right.
And he's been following this, and he's going to be talking about it on his channel as well. But he wasn't available tonight, unfortunately. He had a prior engagement. But we're going to try and get him on next week to expand a little bit more on some of the issues that are coming up and questions. Because not only he but his podcast partner, who is a publisher as well, there's going to be some insight from them that is more, I won't say more current than me, but more integrated than I am at the moment. Okay?
Right.
Does that make sense, folks? Because I'm not actively putting a book out right now. It makes a difference. Whereas Gamal's partner is. So hopefully we can get them on next week on Tuesday is what I want to try and do, but we'll see.
Yeah, we're going to continue to cover this as things unfold. So
yeah, definitely. If you have any questions that you want to ask me privately, Quoth the Raven LBR72@gmail.com is the best way to ask me. If I don't have an answer, I'll go seek someone who might. That's the thing.
If you come to ask me, I'll send you to Lewis.
Yeah, well, yeah. Don't just, ask David too. I mean, or David Campiti, because David needs to be in getting into this too. And have you talked to him about the rack situation?
I have not, but I'm going to tonight. So
okay, all right. Yeah, I would tell him to get, go back to that page with the vendor page and have him use the vendor page and explain, send them a link to his Kickstarter for that, a whole bunch of other stuff. I would talk to him about it and have an extended conversation with them because he can do a lot, I think, that would help.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
All right. Okay, folks. We appreciate you watching. We've been on for an hour and a half. We don't have any reviews tonight because this fell in our laps this week. And between trying to make sure we kind of knew what was going on with this and also stuff going on in our personal lives, we didn't have time to do reviews this week. We'll get the reviews that were supposed to be done this week next week. Tomorrow, we are going to be on for our Friday night movie night.
Yes,
John,
and it is
The Yellow Submarine, the Beatles animated feature film from the 60s. That'll be on at 8:00 tomorrow night, barring any unforeseen circumstances with my father. He's got an ear infection, and we have to go do some checkups and stuff on that tomorrow. But anyway, if you have any other questions or comments, I'm on Facebook at Lewis.BrightRaven. I'm on the Muskrat channel at LewisBrightRave2. You can see some of my artwork at deviantart.com/BrightRaven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven, exclusively on YouTube. If comments, Quoth the Raven, LBR72@gmail.com. If I don't answer you there, try lewisbrettraven@yahoo.com. If you have questions for Chris, he is at Christopher M. Hall, 1973 @gmail.com.
Yes, sir.
Alrighty, folks. We'll see you next time. Quoth the Raven, nevermore.
Nevermore.